Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Transcend the podcast. I am here with Deborah Johnson Miranda, who is the owner of Be Money Coaching. Hey Deb, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor.
Of
I love your
course.
podcast.
Oh, thank you. And what y'all don't know, to those of you listening, is that there's construction going on upstairs. And so we spent like 10 minutes trying to figure out if the buzzing was going to be really loud. And now there's a window, so we're going for it. So if for some reason you hear some buzzing, then that's why. Just, tune that part out. So, Deb, can you tell me a little bit about the business that you run and how you got started?
Sure. So I fell into money coaching completely by accident. I had been doing it, kind of counseling friends and family over the years, while at the same time my own finances were just not where they needed to be, not where I was telling my clients, my friends, where theirs needed to be. And in 2017, I was facing foreclosure on my home, and I was trying to do whatever I could to stop that, and ultimately ended up filing for bankruptcy to stop the foreclosure. So about 6 months into that process, the trustee said that he didn't think I was making enough money to make those payments for 5 years, so the bankruptcy was dismissed. And at that point, I had to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to sell my house? Am I going to allow the foreclosure to proceed? What's going to happen? So I was able to enter mediation to put everything off. But while I was trying to do mediation, and while I was trying to do to work with the lender, the mortgage servicer, time just kept passing and passing, and they kept delaying and delaying. And I found myself in 2019 having to do the same thing all over again. And I was tired. It was just too much. So I ended up filing again for bankruptcy, ended up having it dismissed. And January 2020 rolled around, and I decided this is it. So I talked to my mom and my kids, and I said, I think it's time that we sell the house. So a few weeks before the country shut down, we put our house up for sale. And I was lucky to not be one of those funny upside down mortgages. And I did walk away with a little bit of money, and I was determined to preserve that money and also to counsel and coach myself into fixing my finances in a way that would help me grow. I opened up an emergency fund. I opened up a Roth. I started paying more attention to my previous retirement plans and working on all of that. And then I started sharing all of that on social media. Like so many other people, they're like, I'm just going to do this. And then little by little, you get people who are like, oh, can you help me with this? Or can you help me with that? Or I'm looking for this kind of help. And that's just basically how it all evolved.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story because, there's the win on the other side of that, right? And I think just even sharing that, like, it's really hard sometimes to share those moments when we may not be proud or we may not understand how we got to where, logically, but at least for me, when I'm like, oh my gosh, am I in this situation again? I should have known, like all the shoulds come out, all the pieces of advice that I know and didn't listen to. So thank you for sharing that information, because I think it just helps to normalize and to take some of the shame away. So definitely kudos to you for that.
It was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was really, really hard. I felt like this is the only home my children have known. This is the home that my mother and sister moved into when they moved to Seattle. And I just felt like, what have I done? And my entire family just lifted me up, and they were like, you have done enough. You have done enough. And we're still going to be together. That's not going to change. And this is an opportunity to start over. The house that we lived in had a lot of problems. It needed at least $100,000 worth of maintenance and fixing and plumbing and electricity. And I didn't have the money to do that. So renting became a really good option for us. And the weight that lifted from me was amazing. And that's what I try to do, is to tell people, and try to be vulnerable, and not be embarrassed by it anymore, and say, look, I know what it's like. I know what this feels like. And I absolutely do not believe in shaming. Nobody ever shamed me. I shamed myself. But I tell the clients, no, it's just, there's no point in, I should have done this, or I should have listened to this, because it's in the past. And I personally am in a better place right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about like that weight that was lifted. Because I know for me, so I'm a Libra, right? I go back and forth trying to find that balance and overthink absolutely every single thing, from like nail color to like, what am I going to do with my life? So, but there is so much power and just relief in making a decision. So how much does making a decision play out with your clients, and how much did it affect you, just to be able to say, not whether it's the right one or the wrong one, but just being able to make a decision about where you're going in the future?
So I think the first thing is to look at what you value. What are your values? And what is it that brings you to the point where you have to make a decision, so that agency isn't taken from you? If I had not decided to sell my home, they would have foreclosed. And the worst part about that is that, like I said, I had equity, and I would have lost that. I would have lost that little bit of money that I had. And so, I just thought, I need to just say, fuck it. I am going to do this. And I have to make a really hard decision, because I want to be the one to make the decision, even if it's the hard one. I don't want it to be made for me. And that's something that's really important, because I think that gives people power. The clients say, I feel more, a little more in control. It's not the best decision, but it was my decision. And I think that's really important for people
Yeah.
to understand.
Yeah. And sometimes my decision is more impactful than quote unquote the best decision, right? Because there are a million ways to make money. There are a million ways to get out of debt. There are a million ways to live this life. But what is really important is whether or not it's in alignment with your goals, your personality, the things that you want out of life. So, um, did you feel, so you said that you were shaming yourself, but did you feel any pressure from family or cultural pressure about making the decision to either leave the house or to sort of revamp finances? I know that like in my family, most of my family has done pretty well. And so I have sort of internalized this pressure of where I should be at 38 years of age, what I should own at 38 years of age, right? I also have friends who have immigrant parents that, culturally, I mean, every choice is your own, but you may not feel like you have a lot of choices because you have the either family to support or even if it's not financially, but just to support in the culture and by doing the thing that is expected. I mean, I feel like that too sometimes. So did you have any of that you had to work through?
A little bit, yeah, because, we are a multi-generational family. My mother is 88, and at the time, my youngest was turning 15. And I had my three kids living with me. My mother, I'm technically an immigrant, but I came into the United States at a very young age. So I grew up in the Latino culture. Even though I was, at home I was a Latina, but when I went out, I was somebody else, and I had to straddle that, the two different cultures. And I think that one of the things that made it difficult for me wasn't so much the decision to sell the house, but what became really difficult was finding a home that would accommodate us all, because there was no way I was going to separate my mother and my sister from me and my children. That was just not something that was going to happen. And I remember that same year talking to a therapist who was no longer my therapist, who was saying that I needed to face reality and, find housing for my mom and my sister for low income people or for seniors, and then get something affordable for my children and myself. And that was not an option. It was not an option. So of course, having to find a bigger home meant more money. And rent in Seattle is ridiculous. But I was willing to make that sacrifice because I didn't want my mom. There was no way. That wasn't even a question, you know. And so that was the pressure that I felt, the pressure of taking care of my mom and my sister. My sister's disabled. And so I don't regret it. And I would say more that there would be more societal pressures to do that. But because it was the onset of the pandemic, I didn't have anybody to go to. My kids were, for them, it's just unthinkable to not live with their abuela and their tia. And it was the same for my mom and my sister. It just didn't come up. And like I said, I had complete support of my kids and my mom. Just my mom was like, "Hija, you are taking on too much, and it's time to sell." When I was struggling with that decision, and the kids were like, "What the hell? Why not?"
Like, whatever.
we can do this. We can do this.
Yeah.
My oldest was 20 at the time, or 19.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just like, "Let's do it."
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
I'm really, really grateful for that.
Yeah. And what you said about making sure that you are clear about your own priorities. There are, so many people, again, who will tell you what the right thing is and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. But we all have to make decisions in money and finances and business, in love, in whatever, right? That really truly meets our unique needs, because at the end of the day, we have to live with the decisions that we make. So yeah. And it can be hard, especially I'll speak from my own experience. When I'm not 100% sure or confident in the move that I'm making, it is scarier, or I'm just less confident in making that move. And so I do look to, outside support for that. But then every time I've gone my own way and said, whatever, this is what I really want to do, I've never regretted the decision, even if it didn't come out in the way that I thought that it was going to come out. So I'm curious to know, what are some of the mindset hurdles that you have to help people work through in your financial coaching?
So one thing that comes up often is that people don't recognize, it's not so much accepting, because they accept it eventually, but they don't recognize how our past relationships with people and with money influence how we handle money today. And I learned that really late. My dad was a veteran of Vietnam. He was an alcoholic. He had a lot of mental issues. He had PTSD, and there was a lot of need in our home growing up. And so I saw my mother struggling all the time to keep food on the table for me and my sister, and struggle the whole time. And I did not realize until much, much later, like just the last few years, how much seeing that influenced how I handled money throughout most of my life. And people tend to not realize that what they saw in their childhood or even in their teens, they don't realize how much that has an influence, and how that causes them to handle money in a certain way. And our emotions are so tied to money. Our mental health is so tied to money. If you have ADHD, depression, anxiety, if you're on the spectrum, if you have other, diagnoses, those will have an influence, for better or for worse, how you handle money. And once you are overcome that, you're like, oh, okay, So now because I have ADHD, I can set up systems so that
Right.
my bills get paid, or so
Mm-hmm.
that if I do go over budget on something, I have some kind of a cushion. It's
Right.
learning what little quirks and foibles we have to
Mm-hmm.
set us up so that we have these cushions, or that we have some kind of protection,
The support
um,
that you need.
and the support. And I think it's really important also, physical health is really important. And, I was, just in January, I was uh, given some test results that shocked me. And I immediately, went on a regimen to, try to, fix the issues. I'm pre-diabetic. And so I was like, oh my God, this is going to lead to, type 2. And then it could be, what do I need to do? Because if I don't have my health, then what good is a coaching business? What good is, working a 6-figure job? What good is, finding a home for my family to rent if I don't have my health? So I've started to incorporate your physical health also into this, because we talk a lot about mental health and emotional health, but there's also the physical health. And people are like, well, why do I need to get a annual exam,
Right. Right.
whatever. And it's like, you need to do that because you need to take care of your health, because how are you going to be able to do and function? And a lot of your physical ailments cause issues with your mental health. I have hypothyroidism. If I'm off my medication for 2 days, my mind just goes berserk and I become a basket case, you know? And so those are things that people don't really think about. They don't connect them until it's brought to them, and then they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense." I do have to put myself first sometimes, which is really hard for me because as a Latina, we don't do that. I everything is for my family. So when am I gonna have time for self care? Self care to me, it's a privilege, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have
Yeah.
time for that.
Right. You got
Because
to
I've
make
got
time.
uh, yeah, you have to make time, but it's like, when am I going to do that without getting somebody knocking on the bathroom door saying,
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the store to buy cereal?
Right, right.
you
Totally,
know?
totally. It makes me think
Yeah.
of a couple of things so a couple years ago, I was running my practice, but starting to slow it down, was in business school and had just gotten the teaching job in Sacramento. Was that the time? Yes, that was the time. And I was also teaching exercise classes at the bar method around the corner,
Oh my God.
and I loved it. I didn't want to give that up, but I couldn't do it all. Right, I was doing a lot, and I couldn't do any more than what I was already doing. And I made a promise to myself. I'd generally always worked out, but I was like, Asha, you are going to be. You are potentially going to lose your mind from all of this work that you are doing, but you better not lose your health. So make sure that you continue to work out 4 to 5 days a week and take care of yourself first. And those nights, like if I would go salsa dancing Friday night, I would make sure that I would get up early to
Ooh.
go. Yeah, exactly. That I would get up early and go to Orange Theory Fitness before I would get to class at 9 a.m. and sit there all day. So working out and taking care of your health is so important, not just for the physical part of that, but that also influences the endorphins that are released, and influences your mood and how you feel about yourself. But how you feel about yourself also influences how you're going to take care of your money, because the self-esteem that you build tells you how you feel about yourself. So if you think that you are worth it, then you are going to do things that prove that you are worth it. If you think that you're not worth it, you're going to do things that prove to yourself that you're not worth it. Going back to the part that you were saying about, our money stories, that they begin in childhood, is so true. I had made this connection in a coaching group in the fall, that my relationship with money really mirrored the relationship that I had with my dad. That I
Oh,
was like,
okay.
hey,
Yeah.
I'm here, see me, I want this, but I don't want to ask for it, because what if I ask for it and it doesn't come? right? And the same thing about like, hey, I'm here, Dad, see me, and I want to spend time with you. But then if you tell me no, or if you disappoint me, then I don't want to ask because I don't want to be disappointed, right? And that revelation to me was like, what? Like I got the same relationship with money as I did with my dad and men. What?
Yeah. It's like a cut and paste. It's like, you have this thing
Totally.
and then you're like pasting it into your money relationship.
Totally. And then the
Yeah.
coping mechanism is to say what I said was that I just don't want to care about it. And the coach who was coaching me was like, is that true? Do you really not want to care about it? And I was like, no, I don't. I just don't want to be disappointed. Right. And so instead of pretending like I didn't have these feelings, now I have learned how to accept them and work through them. Okay, Asha, so when you start to feel disappointed, what do you need to support yourself in that feeling? What do you need to keep going? And if you are disappointed, what does that mean? What are you making this mean about you? And what should you not make it mean about you? So all of those skills are super useful. And I totally see the value because I've experienced it of working with a coach like yourself to help get through that mindset stuff.
Yeah. Self-awareness is a big thing. That's why when I start off coaching, the first session isn't about, okay, let's pull out your bank statements and your budget worksheet and let's see how much debt you have. It's not about that at all. It's so that the person has to have the foundation of understanding, okay, we need you to be self-aware. What are your values? What are your goals? What is your purpose? And let's talk also about why you feel this way, or what the what happened to that made you how you are. Why do you have these challenges? Because until the person, and it's a process that has to last far beyond coaching. I'm just here to say, okay, these are some things that you're going to need to think about and work through, and it's not going to end after 12 weeks. This is something that has to continue. You have to build on it, because you can't just. I feel like you can't just start being like, okay, let's look at all your this and that and whatever. How did you grow up? Where did you grow up? What is your background? What's your gender, your sexuality, your race, your ethnicity? Are you undocumented? Are you there's so many things that play into that. And, I've seen that. I mean, I have a friend that I've been trying to coach for years. He's from Honduras. He grew up very, very poor. And he makes decent money now, and he refuses to even see how much he has saved for retirement. And I'm like, oh my God, he has. I suspect that he has a really good chunk, but he's
I'm
so
sure he does.
afraid of not
Yep.
having money.
Yep.
He's 56 years old, and he's still working as a bricklayer.
Mm-hmm.
Pays
Back-breaking labor.
really, really well. But every time I
Mm-hmm.
see him, he looks so much more older than before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, we need to figure out, what is going on. He does not want to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Every time that I get like that, where I'm like, I'm not going to look, it's either way better than I thought it was going to be, or it's not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. So when I first started really like diving into taking control, because also growing up in childhood, it was like, my dad was really conservative with money, and conservative meaning like, I'm not going to pay for this for you. Ask your mom,
Okay.
right? And then
Oh, wow.
my mom covered all the bills and expenses. And I remember seeing her sit down she still does, sits down at the table and writes out her checks and puts them in the mail. But we didn't have money conversations. And the only time that we really had money discussions, it wasn't even a discussion. It was like money was tight and I had to ask for something and I couldn't get it. So I didn't really understand, most of what I've learned about money has come as an adult. Um, but every time, so a couple years ago, pre-pandemic, I decided that I was going to get myself together and I was really going to take control of my finances. So just a couple years ago. And one of the things that I did was to set a reminder on my phone to check Mint, where I use to catalog everything every day.
Mm-hmm.
8 p.m. it goes off every day, and just that exercise, that habit of doing that just changed everything because I wasn't afraid. I knew where things were going. When I was spending too much going out to eat with friends, I could say, oh, okay, I could see it, right? Instead of just hoping that at the end of the month I had stayed within the
Exactly.
budget. So
Yeah.
those tools are really helpful.
Yeah, and tools like that are helpful. I mean, I have, my credit union app on my phone, so I just check it every day. I have the TIA, CREF, and Fidelity apps on my phone, so I just check them every day. And I get so excited when I see, a bump in my investments, because it's like, yeah, and then I show the kids, and I show the Giancarlo, who is 18, just turned 18 in January. I opened a Roth IRA for him last year. And I show him, look how much money you've got. Look how much money is in there. The little bit of money that you're putting in every month, that's the money that, look at it, look at how it's growing, and then when there's a dip, I tell him, oh, look, there's a dip. But you know what's going to happen? It's just going to go back up.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's the whole point. And I said, the money in your Roth isn't for, pulling out whenever you see something bad. It's for leaving in there for the long term. And you're going to see how much that grows. So developing that habit is super important. My oldest child, Maria, is a senior at the University of Washington, and I opened a Roth for them also, and gave them a good chunk to start it off. And then every month, they're not working, but they take a little bit of money whenever they have something, and every month there's just a little bit of money going into it. And I'm like, it doesn't matter that it's only $10 or $20. The importance is the habit.
So let's talk about that, the $10 or $20, right? Because I think some people, I know a lot of people, myself included, right? I feel like it's like, they say this about like going to church or going to the hospital, right? Like people will be like, oh, I can't go to church. I got to get my life together. They say, well, you don't go to the hospital after you've healed, right? Like you go to the hospital to get better, right? And same thing with finances. I think a lot of people feel like, well, I got to get my finances together before I can meet with a coach. But like, bust that myth for us. Bust that myth right there.
I'll give you an example. So my ex-husband has had an accounting business for as long as Maria has been alive, for like 22 years. And at Christmas, I got nosy, and I was like, what you got for retirement? Oh, and he's like, I just have, Social Security. And I said, no. So I plopped my machine down in front of him, and I said, these are the plans that are, that you can apply, Okay. 2 weeks later, he came to pick the kids up for something, and I'm like,
did you do
and
it?
What have you done? And he's like, no, I'm still researching. Okay. No, you're not researching. You're putting off what you should be doing. And if you don't allocate $10, $50, $100 a month because you're waiting for to get your finances together, well, you're not getting your finances together if you're just letting everything slide. So by even starting with $10, you are already getting your finances in order, because when you finally do get off your ass and do that budget, you're going to see, oh, I've got $10 going to my retirement, right? So you have to start somewhere, and you're not going to have your finances together. I don't know how to say this in a way that isn't repetitive. Your finances, people think that their finances have to be together in the sense that, oh, I have to pay off debt, or I have to find my bank statements, or I have to ask for a raise. No, you have to start now. You have to start now so that you can see and calculate, well, okay, this is how much I'm making. This is how much is going out. And you know what? I'm going to look around now that I know where my money is going. I'm going to look around and see how much people are making in my field, and I'm going to ask for a raise. It's not a one and done process. It's something that happens all the time. Well, I wonder if maybe I should be, I found out I have a company match. I'm going to increase my contribution so that I get that company match, the full match, right? That is you're never going to have your finances completely fixed. That's not going to happen, because they're going to change over your lifetime. They're going to change as priorities change. You get married, divorced, your kids leave the house, your kids come home, you have unexpected expenses. That doesn't happen in a period of 1 month of you getting your act together, or in 12 months of coaching. It's a lifelong process. And the whole point of coaching is to make you aware of these things so that when you leave coaching, you continue to work on keeping your money, knowing where it's going. There's no
Right.
such thing as getting your finances together. It's
Mm-hmm.
managing your money.
Yeah, I like that. It's active.
It's
It's continuous.
yes, it's never
Yeah.
going to end. You're not going
Mm-hmm.
to stop feeding your body just because, oh, I had
Right.
dinner today, so now, oh, okay, I'm fixed. I don't have to eat
Right.
anymore
Right. Right. Right.
forever. Yeah,
Right.
no, you have
Right.
to continually feed your body to
Mm-hmm.
be able to nourish it and grow it and make
Mm-hmm.
it better. And it's
Yeah.
the same thing with your money. You're not going to
Yeah.
just, do that,
Yeah.
and it's just not going to happen that way.
I agree. So I think this is so important for Black and Latinx folks to hear, and especially like business owners, and especially Black and Brown business owners, right? Because often we don't start businesses with a whole lot of money. And, we don't necessarily know how to go out there and get money because we don't have all the connections or just don't even know where to look to get money. But if you are an entrepreneur with a business and you haven't set up a retirement account yet, I would say at the very least, put like $10 a month. $100 is even greater, but like a $10 a month into some account that has an interest rate that is going to multiply and grow your investment, because $10, you could ask 10 friends for $1, right? Even if you have to do that, but I want you to do that because you cannot recoup time. You can make more money, but you cannot recoup time when you're investing. So it's so important. It's so important. Yeah. Do you have more to add about how important this is for Black and Latino folks just to stay on top of the financial planning and maybe some of the things that you've seen working with clients?
What I've seen was very common. I mean, I talked about it earlier, is that we are so focused on our families. You've got grandparents bringing up grandchildren. You've got grandparents um, helping, the single parent. My mom, I'm a single parent. I've been a single parent for 10 years. And, my mother helped me bring up my children. And I think it's really important that we learn to, how do I say this? We need to learn, and I'm still working on this, to put ourselves first, and to, and I hate to do that because that's such it's such a me thing. It's such
Right. Which we
this
have been
culture.
taught is not okay, but that's actually okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because this, I mean, and the pandemic has been a huge part of this. I don't want to wear a mask because why can't, I have freedom, I have independence, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you've got the other side saying, but it's for your neighbors, for your family, for your community, right? Because this country is so focused on individualism. And so for me to say to my mother, I want to go on a trip by myself, it's like,
Hmm.
no, no, no,
Right.
no, 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 no,
Right.
no, no, no. No. And
Yeah.
so that's something that like I said, I struggle with it. And I think that we can balance it. I'm still struggling with it. But I do think that at the very least, it needs to be recognized that Black and Brown communities have that thing. Like, how dare you go to the thing or whatever? How dare you do this or the other thing when you have the other thing that you should be taking care of? And it's like, well, we need to say, I'll be able to take better care of it when I'm in a better place. And by going to the pool, by going to a club, by going out to dinner, by going to the movies with a friend, that makes me a better person and more happy and more willing. And I have more time and I want to be with you more. Um, and it's especially hard because, we're stuck between the two cultures, because like, my mother was like, I never needed a man, blah, 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 blah. She never remarried after she and my dad divorced,
Right.
and she told me when I was divorcing, that if I got involved with somebody to at least wait until she died.
Oh my goodness.
Then she said,
Oh,
if you do while I'm alive, I'm taking Rebecca, my sister, and I'm leaving.
hmm. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What that's an ultimatum right there.
Yeah. And it's like, wow. So I have to live my life the way she lives her life. right? Um, and that's something that I've had to work on really hard over the last 10 years that because our parents say things to us that really have an impact. I mean, I'm 52 years old and I'm fucking still having to listen to my mother,
Right,
and
right.
so, and it's especially hard for our communities, I think, because we're so family oriented that one person takes a step away and you're seen as like, oh, you've got the heirs, or who do you think you are? And, and it's like, ¿quién se cree? And it's like, I just wanted to go to get a hamburger,
Right,
you
right, by
know?
myself because I needed
And
a moment.
so, and it's hard and it's a lifelong process. And for something like that, I think it's really important that we admit that we need therapy and we get a person of color who is going to understand, because that was my mistake in not doing that when I had this woman telling me I had to find a place for my mom and my sister to live alone. And so it's really hard to do that. And so I think acknowledging it, recognizing it, is the first step. And then figuring out how to work through all of those things, I think, is where we'll be in a more comfortable place. It won't be comfortable if you're my age, but maybe your age or younger. It would be more comfortable to be like, okay, by the time I'm Deb's age, I'm going to be.
You say that like you're so much older than me, but you're not. But
Well,
mhm.
I was just going to say, I just turned 52, so I'm kind of feeling like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm 38. I'm a little bit behind you, but
Oh,
not
yeah, you're
not
behind.
too far, right?
Really? 40?
My I know. I feel like I'm definitely closing in on my 40s for sure. But just thinking about like one thing I'm thinking about is like those messages that we hear, right? And those things that may have served our parents or the previous generation, or maybe even served us previously, but don't serve now. Like I heard a similar thing from my mom. She was like, you just have a really high need to be in a close relationship with somebody, because after my dad, she never dated, wasn't
Oh,
interested in anybody,
okay.
right? And
Okay.
I remember I
Mm-hmm.
told my best friend, I was like, oh my God, am I just like needy? And my friend looked at me and she's like, Asha, are you crazy? You're human. Humans are designed to be in a relationship with people. But
Social.
because I
Yeah.
had heard this from
Mm-hmm.
my mother, whom I love and
Mm-hmm.
like, respect the
Exactly.
words that she said, I couldn't even filter it through like
Oh
something
my God.
logical. It was just, it
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, I'm so needy. I have high needs, right? So I think it is really important to be in community with people who are like-minded, who have similar experiences. You hear things differently. Maybe you hear things for the first time. You can work through some of that stuff, the culture that is changing and evolving, right? It's two different worlds that we're living in. Another example is that my mom and my uncle and my aunt, they worked for 40 plus years for the same employer, and that was the thing to do. My cousin,
Exactly.
who's
Mm-hmm.
also in her 50s, her goal was to have a new job every 3 years. And my
Okay.
goal is to, be my own enterprise, right? And so
Exactly. See?
there's that cultural rift where my mom not looks at my cousin, but if she were to interview, she was a principal. So if she were to interview someone who had a new job every 3 years, she'd be like, this person's not stable. Why do they keep leaving? Right. But then I just heard on like an Instagram post, right? Because that's where all my inspiration comes from these days. This lady was like, get a new job every 3 to 5 years because that's how you're going to increase your wealth. If you're not planning to be a business owner, because then when you go to a new job, you can negotiate a higher salary than what you had from the job that you were leaving, right? So there's some strategy at jumping ship because you can increase your income faster than if you stay in the same spot where they just are going to have the incremental 3% or 10% raises, right? So different time, different culture, you know, sage advice for my mom's generation. My cousin had a plan and made it work. And then now his younger generation is like, yeah, if you want to accelerate your income, this is one way to do it. And it makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm. It does
So
totally make sense. Yeah.
yeah, so it's so important to
Yeah.
surround yourself with those folks who are going in the same or similar direction as you want to go, who
Yes.
can relate and support you along the way for sure.
Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
anybody. I don't think, I mean, all my all my, entrepreneurs on social media, but it's like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, even my friends, everybody just, has their 9 to 5, da 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 da, that kind of thing, but nobody has struck out like this. So, yeah. And so community is really important in that sense, that we need to see other people, who speak our language and who look like us, to sustain us and to support us. It's really, really important. It's like your group, your coaching program is what people need, because they need that community. Um, and it's not going to replace, the family, but it's just another, the more the merrier. You need that group that can cheer you on, and that can lift you up when you need it.
Right, right.
So
Because
yeah.
people can't take you where they haven't been themselves for the most part,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
if I don't have any entrepreneurs in my family that
Mhm.
have done something similar to what I want to do, they can like clap and say, good job, Asha, but they're not going to be able to walk me through some of those mental hurdles or challenges because they haven't been down that path. They might have really good, well-meaning advice from their own experience, but not the kind of advice that can lead me through that situation. And there's no problem with that. That just means that I need to find the community that can assist me with that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 So it's really important, entrepreneurs who are listening, to find your community and do not wait to get set up with a financial coach or even just on your financial plan, because there is so much that you can do through your business, through opening up retirement accounts, through paying for expenses like insurance or reimbursing yourself for insurance, or cell phone like regular business expenses. And there's a lot that you can do as a business owner. And if you have children and you have a sole proprietorship or an LLC, you can hire your children under the age of 18 and pay them, and you don't have to pay payroll taxes and FICA. And then you can help direct that money, whether it's their spending money or whether you want them to open up what is it called, a minors IRA, or a
The
custodial IRA, I
custodial,
think it
yeah. Yeah.
is. And then
No,
again, that time, the value of time, you start contributing
yes,
to your kids' retirement accounts when they're under the age of 8. Like, you can't get that time back.
you can't. No.
Yeah.
And I would like to say, or specify, when people think of community, they may think of more, a whole group, but a community can start with one other person and go and build up from there. And that's something that I'm working on my end, just up here in Seattle. It's something that I want to start, because we need, hopefully with the mask mandate lifting, at the end of March, and hopefully with the pandemic easing or going away, please, please, I'm hoping that I'll be able to have people meet in person, even if it's just one other person. But having that community, for Latinos, for Black folks, we really need to have that. We need to have that, for the entrepreneurs, and also, even a group coaching session in my home for people, to kind of learn, do a workshop or learn something. I think is really important to have that kind of, that back. Somebody needs to have my back. I need to have their back.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
important to have that.
Yeah, it's important to find the skill, but also to find the zone. That's what I
Mhm.
was going to say earlier, is that you're talking about it might be uncomfortable, to make some of these
Mhm.
moves. But I heard this quote about the comfort zone and how it's really a misnomer. It's not named properly because really it's our familiar zone. So
Oh,
if
okay.
I am
Mhm.
looking for some support because my finances aren't in order or aren't where I want them to be, but
Mhm.
I'm scared to reach out because that's out of my comfort zone. That's not
Oh,
really
I
the
see.
comfort zone. It's the familiar zone because I'm
It makes
already
sense.
uncomfortable, which is what makes me want to reach out, right? So
Okay.
now I'm just doing something that's not familiar. And I think for me, it's easier to accept that this is not familiar because
Mhm.
I'm already uncomfortable. So why not
Mhm.
be uncomfortable moving in the direction that I want to go? Like
Exactly.
it's false that I'm comfortable in my comfort zone. That's not my comfort zone. I'm
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable. It's just familiar. Okay, now that I know it's just familiar, let me go, move to something
Mhm.
that's unfamiliar and be okay with
That
that.
makes That
So
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of semantics and wordplay, but I think those words matter.
But
They make a difference, says
it
the
does
attorney.
matter. Yeah, it does matter.
Absolutely.
They totally
So,
do.
Deb, if people want to find you and reach out to you and inquire about your coaching services, how do they find you?
I'm most often on Instagram at Be Money Coaching. I'm on Facebook, Be Money Coaching, my website, bemoneycoaching.com, and I'm on Twitter at Be Money Coach.
Yep. And it's B like BEE, like a
Be like
little bumblebee.
Yeah, I got that because my name is Jewish or Hebrew,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
B is Deborah.
Uh-huh.
Deborah is
Got
B
it.
in Hebrew. So yeah,
Got it. Got
I
it.
was like,
Got it. Got it.
oh,
That's
yeah.
funny. Well, I used to be Asha BEE on Instagram before I changed it to Asha Wilkerson
Oh,
ESQ because my
really?
middle name is Bailey, and I was like, well, let me try and be cute. So
Oh,
I had Asha B
oh,
and a
that's
little
cute.
bumblebee
I
right
like
there.
that.
So when I
Yeah,
saw B Money Coaching, I was like, yeah,
yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I
yeah,
like that.
awesome.
Yeah,
Well, thank you, Deb, so much for sharing your story with us and
sure.
some of your
Thank you so
knowledge with
much.
the entrepreneurs. If y'all are listening or watching, like definitely go find Deb. She's great, has great resources, and will be a resource to you as well if you would like her to be. So go find her. All
Oh,
right. Thanks,
thank you
Deb.
so
We'll see
much.
y'all next
Thank you.
time.
Thank you.